That was very sudden. Díomh chuirde agus fáilte rómh anseo. And tá fíor áthas orm a chuirde úsle si bheith anseo in Áras an Uachtarán inniu don ócáid speisialta seo agus ceithre scór bliain de cadramh tailóireachta idir éire agus hAstráile ó cheiliúra agan. Báhatlam fáilte ó chrí a chur raibh Governor Chultas na hAstráile a Soilse Sam Mostyn. May I offer a 100 míle fáilte to the Governor-General of Australia, Her Excellency, the Honourable Sam Mostyn AC, Minister Feehan, and Ceann Comhairle, Verona Murphy, James O'Connor TD, Chief Justice Donal O'Donnell, Excellencies and all distinguished guests as we mark 80 years of diplomatic relations between Ireland and Australia. And just before I go any further, I know the Governor-General was at Croke Park yesterday, and I couldn't let, being from the west of Ireland and a neighbour of Mayo, we celebrated together, and it was a wonderful moment, a joyful moment. So we're all in high spirits today. Governor-General, you bring a wealth of experience to your role, having been a board member of numerous organisations across different sectors, not least the Australian Climate Council, as well as the Go Foundation, which creates educational opportunities for Indigenous young people. And I understand over 1,600 scholarships have been granted to date by the Foundation, with 62% of those bestowed in 2025 awarded to girls, of the ones bestowed in 2025. Since taking up your role in 2024, you have placed an emphasis on a number of core issues, including, though not exclusively, care, mental health and violence against women. You are also known as a strong advocate for women in sports, having helped create the Australian Football Women's League and serving indeed as the first female AFL commissioner. I should say also that you're the second Governor-General in 99 years that's a woman. So on that note, which is a complete contrast to the gender representation I understand in government in Australia, but that's some achievement in 99 years, and you're the number 28. I think a Bula bus might be deserved. I'm delighted to note that the Australian Football League Women's organisation has emerged as one of the most high-profile examples of Irish-Australian cooperation, with 40 Irish women currently playing the highest level with the teams. Indeed, notwithstanding the enormous geographical distance between our two countries, Ireland and Australia share deep historical, cultural, diplomatic and economic ties. The first known Irish to arrive in Australia came with the First Fleet, I understand, in 1791, when Britain transported 155 Irish convicts to Australia after the British government created a penal colony in New South Wales and later Tasmania. Around 40,000 Irish convicts were sent in appalling conditions to Australia between 1791 and 1867 alone. The bulk of these individuals had been convicted of petty larceny and theft, often driven by extreme poverty and survival, with dire consequences for the most vulnerable and permanently altering lives over minor infractions. And I think those statistics are a relevant reminder in today's world of the necessity, the importance of ongoing public discourse about how our laws shape a particular view of society. Moreover, between 1840 and 1914, over 300,000 Irish emigrated to Australia. More recently, immigration from Ireland to Australia has risen to its highest levels since 2013, with an estimated 13,500 people having moved in the year leading up to April 2025. Clearly, without a doubt, there are mutual benefits for both our countries, but also a cause for urgent reflection on the circumstances giving rise to such immigration. There are now over 100,000 Irish-born residents living in Australia, along with 2.5 million, 1 in 10 Australians who claim Irish heritage. The figures for the Australian diaspora in Ireland are smaller but significant, with approximately 3,500 Australian citizens permanently or temporarily residing here, showing how inextricably linked are our two countries. And indeed, in the Irish Times, they have a series of articles on various people coming to our countries, and the last one I read was by an Australian, and what struck out was what he picked out as a similarity, that we don't take ourselves too seriously, which I think is a very good characteristic. But on trade and investment, Ireland and Australia exceed 6.9 billion in two-way goods and services annually, further bolstered by the EU-Australia Free Trade Agreement. Irish investment in Australia totals roughly 56 billion, with Australian investment in Ireland reaching 88 billion. We also, of course, share a proud history of UN peacekeeping. Australia commenced its involvement in peacekeeping, as I understand it, in 1947, when the first Australian military observers were deployed to the Netherlands, as it was at the time, the Netherlands East Indies, which is now Indonesia. Ireland, of course, is also very proud of our unbroken record of peacekeeping service under the UN flag since 1958. Over that time, our defence forces have served in various conflict zones, including Lebanon, gaining the trust of the local population wherever they served. And we lose that hard-won credibility at our peril. And indeed, I had the privilege of receiving the credentials of 4 ambassadors just a week ago, one of them from Liberia. And the main topic of conversation with that ambassador was in relation to the reputation left by our Irish UN peacekeeping forces back between 2003 and 2007. And the memory is still alive of the trust that was built up. Moreover, Ireland and Australia share a colonial past, albeit for different lengths of time and albeit with different exit routes from that colonisation. That experience has profoundly shaped us as peoples, enabling and obliging us to recognise injustice wherever it occurs and to speak truth to power without fear or favour. That responsibility is all the more important in today's world. As we gather here today together, there are approximately 130 armed conflicts ongoing throughout the world, with 117.8 million people forcibly displaced, the highest figure, I understand, since the Second World War. Indeed, we see the very structures, including the UN Charter and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, set up after the horrific Second World War to ensure that it would never happen again. And we see those structures undermined on a daily basis by powerful entities and politicians, both elected and unelected. Nowhere is this clearer than in the courts. The rulings of the International Court of Justice are ignored by powerful states. Judges and prosecutors of the International Criminal Court are threatened and sanctioned for doing their jobs. And the European Court of Human Rights, established following that war, is under political pressure on so many fronts. Of course, inextricably linked with the undermining of the UN and the normalisation of war is the existential threat posed by climate change. And in this regard, I want to recognise the Governor-General's record in this area, and also the very courageous step taken by the Irish government when Ireland became the second country in the world to declare a climate and biodiversity emergency in May 2019. Unfortunately, the transformative action consequent on that declaration has not happened at the scale or speed required. In fact, our approach to climate change is illustrative of cognitive dissonance. We all know the planet is burning, and yet we continue to believe that we can do business as usual. Holding two fundamentally conflicting ideas together at the same time. And it's a tension that the psyche can only tolerate for a short period of time. The resolution of that tension requires us to choose, and that choice is crucial for the planet and for humanity. In light of the challenges we face, too, in light of the challenges we face, too often framed through the self-serving, narrow lens of security without background or historical context, it is essential that we reaffirm our commitment to the universality of human rights. Indeed, the recent words from Pope Leo, and I might say at this point I have a Father up in heaven who's laughing as I quote the Pope, the hard time I gave him, but his words are worth quoting. And his words are a call for urgent reflection on the detrimental consequences for humanity of seeing the world through that narrow paradigm alone. More particularly, in his address to the Spanish Parliament in June 2026, he said, and I quote, "True security, however, stems from justice, patient dialogue, respect for international law, and a policy capable of placing the lives of people above the interests that profit from war." In the same speech, he also said, "We can never get used to counting our dead." I don't wish to finish on that note, but it is important for me to say that. Agus ag an pointe seo mar ocail scur, as conclusion, and I ask you all to stand and join me in a toast. Buimish sonas agus Shean a Soilse sa Mostyn, go ma fada buan an corgus agus an cadrah idir ar muintir ngach gné den seal. May I propose a toast to the health and happiness of Her Excellency, the Honourable Sam Mostyn, and to the continuing friendship and affection between our two peoples. Sláinte. Thank you very much. Sláinte.